Hey YouTube, Kiritwig here, bringing you all an update to my Pendulum Magician's Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for Post-Dimension Force. This was actually the deck I used at Locals for Sneak Peek Weekend. It's really an awesome deck. I love the new support we got for Pendulum Magicians. It definitely does help with the overall consistency and playstyle of the deck, with Beyond the Pendulum replacing Electromite, since the card is still currently banned for the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, but definitely does help, like I said, for all the initial setup that the deck is meant to do, and I really do like the direction that the Pendulum Magicians are taking. We'll have to wait and see if we get anything else off the ban list for the deck. I know we just got Astrograph Magician at 1, so hopefully we'll go from there. Even more with potential cards we could get. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck. For the main deck Pendulum Monsters, I'm running 3 Harmonizing Magician, with this card being your main go-to play setup card. When it is Pendulum Summon, you can special summon 1 Magician Pendulum Monster from your deck in defense position, except for Harmonizing Magician, but its effects are negated, and banish it when it leaves the field. So you can even go for some higher level Pendulum Magician monsters in this deck, and go for some pretty powerful Synchro Monsters like Baron de Fleur, but you still have a strong arsenal with cards like Blasting Draco Slayer and other ones like Borreload Savage Dragon, which work very, very well with the different Link monsters we run in the deck. So she's a definite 3 of, and also being a high scale that just boosts all the monsters you control for each face-up Magician Pendulum monster with different names in your extra deck is an added bonus. Also running 3 of the Double Iris Magician. This card helps by being able to search out the different Pendulum Graph cards that we run in the deck. When it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add 1 Pendulum Graph card from your deck to your hand. So this would really work well with the search for the spell and traps that we run in the deck, including the Star Pendulum Graph and the Time Pendulum Graph. One that has a search potential in the deck, and one that has a destruction capability, and also being able to destroy the face-up Magician cards we run can add to their own card effect activating, along with taking out one of your opponent's cards. And I also run 3 Wisdom Eye Magician. This card can just set up any of the scales you need in the Pendulum scale. So if you open up 2 Wisdom Eye Magicians, you can destroy both, and then set up the scales needed for the potential monsters, and then use cards like Oath Dragon Magician to add the other Wisdom Eye back to your hand, and then Pendulum both out, and then have your play to go through from there. It's a really, really good card and definite 3 of. For the last of the 3 ofs for the Pendulum Magicians, I also run 3 Oath Dragon Magician. It's the recycle card. As I said before, if you have a Magician card in your other Pendulum zone, you can add 1 face-up Magician or Odd Eyes Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, except for Oath Dragon Magician. You can only use this effect of Oath Dragon Magician once per turn, and when it's normal or special summon, you can target 1 Magician Pendulum or Odd Eyes in your graveyard, except for Oath Dragon Magician, add to your hand. I really will use the Pendulum scale effect more, because with our limitation to how many cards we can summon from the extra deck, you definitely do want more of those Pendulum Magicians back to your hand for you to resummon out onto the field. For some of the lower numbers for the Magician monsters, I also run 1 Black Fang Magician, 1 Purple Poison Magician, and also 1 of the Time Gazer Magician. These cards all are at 1-ofs, with Time Gazer Magician being searchable off of Astrograph Sorcerer. Purple Poison Magician and Black Fang can be searched off of Pendulum Call, or set up in the Pendulum scale with your Wisdom Eye Magician, or even summoned onto the field with cards like Harmonizing Magician. That's why I only run the 1-of copies of them. If you open up multiples of them, they really don't help as much as some of the other cards in the deck for their initial playstyle. Purple Poison does help for destroying cards on the field, and Black Fang helps for special summoning cards from the graveyard, but they're really specific situations. That's why I'm running the lower numbers for them. For the search power and setup with cards like Time Gazer Magician, I do run 3 Astrograph Sorcerer. Once again, you can just set this card up in your Pendulum scale, destroy it, and then either set the Time Gazer from your deck or hand into that scale, or special summon it onto the field. You do need the 2 monsters to make Beyond the Pendulum, so setting up a 2 monster board presence before you Pendulum summon is very, very important for your initial setup in the deck, and this is just another card that helps with that. I run 1 Astrograph Sorcerer. This is where this card currently stands on the ban list. So with that, we're running just the 1-of copy of it. When a card is destroyed on the field, you can special summon this card, then search out that card. So it combos very, very well with Astrograph Sorcerer, destroying off of this card's effect to set up Time Gazer, special summoning out Astrograph Sorcerer, and then searching out another Chronograph will set up the Time Gazer and the Astrograph on the field, and the 2 monsters needed for the Link to summon, along with giving you the search for another Chronograph. Another card that helps with the summon of 2 monsters on the field before you Pendulum summon are Tuning Magician, running 3 of this card. If you have 2 Magician cards in your Pendulum zones while this card's in your hand or graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Tuning Magician once per turn. If it's normal or special summon, your opponent gains 400 life points and you take 400. The small damage is definitely worth the easy setup, and this card can be discarded for cards like Pendulum Call and still be used in the graveyard as that special summon. I just like it more than the Supreme King cards in the deck. They add more for the play style in the deck as a whole, so definite 3 of this card because you don't have to rely on the Gate 0 like you had to with the other Supreme King cards. You just have to rely on setting up Tuning Magician in the graveyard and having your 2 scales set. And for more search power, I also run the 3 Astrograph Joker. Having this card at 3 definitely does help being able to search out any of the Magician Pendulum cards to your hand or even the potential Performer Pals. But most of the time, this card comes up with Search as one of the targets for your Pendulum Sorcerer, which we'll get to at some of the lower numbers for the generic Pendulum monsters we run in the deck. I also run 3 Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser as another special summon target in the deck. Once again, you really want to summon out your Beyond the Pendulum because it'll shut down all your plays if you have this card on the field and you've already Pendulum summoned, negating your monster effects and the cards in your Pendulum scale. So as Curtain Raiser can special summon itself from the Pendulum scale, it's another added help with one of your other Pendulums that you could just normal summon onto the field. And I also run the 1 Performer Pal Celestial Magician and the 1 Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer. Once again, searchable with the Pendulum Sorcerer. When it's summoned out onto the field, you can destroy 2 cards you control to search out 2 additional Performer Pal monsters, which most of the time you want to search out Celestial Magician and an additional Skullcrabat Joker. So you have a normal summon on the following turn to use after searching out the initial card of Pendulum Sorcerer and then Pendulum summoning it onto the field. And Celestial Magician allows for you to then, pick up some of your resources on the field, whether they're Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz if it's in the Pendulum scale, and gaining additional card effects depending on what monster you control when this card is normal or special summoned. And then for the last of the monsters in the main deck, since I was running this deck at locals, I do run the 1 Artifact Scythe to go with the Artifact Dagda. The combo definitely did come in handy with the TG Wonder Magician in Halka Fibrax play, shutting down extra decks on the field during the tournament today. So just a one-of to make use of, and also great to combo with Baron de Fleur, being able to special summon it back onto the graveyard to shut down your opponent's extra deck. If you really didn't want to go this combo, you can always put in a second Celestial Magician, so you just have more search targets with the Pendulum Sorcerer, but this is just a player preference if you did choose to run this card at locals for your plays. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. For the spells, we're running 3 Duelist Alliance. If there's a card in the Pendulum zone, you can add 1 Pendulum monster or a Pendulum spell or trap from your deck to your hand. You can activate 1 Duelist Alliance per turn. So with the Pendulum aspect, you can add a good number of cards, including your Double Iris Magician, since it's always treated as a Pendulum Dragon card. Or you can search for the next card, which we run 2 of, which is Pendulum Call. Only running 2 of this card because you can search it out with Duelist Alliance. It is a chance to take because your opponent can Ash Blossom this, and unless you dropped a Tuning Magician, you really will be missing out with a lot of your plays, and it could shut you down completely. You can at least have the 2 scales on the field and then the initial 1 monster after discarding your Tuning Magician, and can still make up from that play. That's really when that's the only card you discard off of Pendulum Call for that summon. And I also run from the new set the 1 extra Pendulum. Now with the play, if I do have to make Beyond the Pendulum, and with it using monsters that I Pendulum summon, as long as I have extra Pendulum, I can make up for that monster effect negation that Beyond the Pendulum will do. So that's why this is a card I'm running in the deck. It can also be a potential second card you run if you want to take out the Artifact Scythe, but keep the Celestial Magician as a one of in the deck and putting a second copy of it. But this card having Pendulum in its name is also searchable with Duelist Alliance. That's why I decided to keep it at 1 in the deck. Also running the 1 Pot of Desires. This card hurt a couple times just with the potential cards it hit, but it helped more than, hurt me during most of my games with the potential draw 2. It gave me more potential cards for the Pendulum summon. And most of the time I'll make sure my Pendulum scales and everything else is already set up on the field before I'm ready to draw 2 and then go for the Pendulum summon. And then to finish off these spells, just the 1-star Pendulum Graph. Not only does it protect my spellcaster type monsters from being targeted by my opponent's cards, and also when a face-up Pendulum monster card leaves your monster zone or Pendulum zone, I can add one Magician Pendulum monster from my deck to my hand, making up for that resource that may have been potentially destroyed by some of my other cards, including Time Pendulum Graph, once again being searched off of Double Iris, just like Star Pendulum Graph. You can use this card to take out your opponent's own cards, and if your card wasn't destroyed as well, you can send one card on the field to the graveyard, making up for that destruction play. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run one Beyond the Pendulum. I honestly considered running a second copy of this card, but just one. You just need 2 effect monsters, including a Pendulum monster. If it's Link Summon in the extra monster zone, you can pay 1,200 life points to add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. But for the rest of this turn, unless you Pendulum Summon, you negate the effects of monsters and also the effects of cards in your Pendulum zone. And also, if 2 monsters with different original levels are Pendulum Summoned to the zones this card points to, you can target 2 cards on the field and destroy them. So that definitely does come up a lot more than I thought it would with all the different level monsters we summon. It made me want to go for those plays more, and with those different levels, I wasn't really hurt as much as I used to be with this deck, because then you can just use them for Link Summon plays, and also destroy cards on the field to benefit from your own Pendulum Magicians that are face up, or destroy your opponent's cards. And the 1,200 search doesn't really hurt as much, because then you'll be hitting for much bigger damage with the board you can create. I also run the 2 Crystron Halka Fibrax. Now this definitely does help because it just gets you your Tuning Magician onto the field that much more quickly when you summon out this card. You can make it with your Harmonizing Magician, just needing 2 monsters, including a tuner. And then being able to summon out this card just gives you the play to go into your next Link 3 monster, which is your Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians, also running 2 copies of this card. For how many spells are on the field in the graveyard, you put counters on this card, and then you can remove 3 counters to special summon a Magician from your graveyard or hand onto the field in defense position. So with that, you have an additional play to then go into your Link 4 play, whether it be your Apollosa or your Access Code Talker. I also run the 1 Artemis. Now this also comes in handy for the shutdown play. If your opponent Ash Blossoms your Pendulum Call and you discarded the Tuning Magician, if this is the only play you have to go off of for that summon, remember you will have to have 1 more resource to summon onto the field, but you can at least make up for that Tuning Magician play by either having the card in your hand normal summon and then sending it to the graveyard, summoning out your Artemis, special summoning if you control the 2, and then there's your Link 2 to go through from there. So this card definitely does help with that play and why I like to run 1 of it. I also run the 1 Artifact Dagda, the 1 Access Code Talker, and the 1 Apollosa, the big Link 4 monsters that help to either stop my opponent's monster effects or go for the game-winning attack. And then the Dagda helps to shut down the opponent's extra deck. If you didn't want to run it along with the Scythe play, you can always take it out for the FA Dawn Dragster. It was the level 7 Synchro I considered running if I wasn't going to go the Dagda route, but that's player preference once again. For the Synchro Monsters, I run 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 of the Burning Draco Slayer, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, and the 1 TG Wonder Magician. Now, I like all these cards. They came up a lot for the plays. The Baron de Fleur, when I summon out the Harmonizing and special summon Oath Dragon onto the field. The Blazing, or I believe it was Blasting Draco Slayer. Because it doesn't target, I was able to get rid of a lot of my opponent's cards. And the Borreload Savage Dragon for being able to use with my Link monsters and then have a monster effect negation along with Apollosa. The TG Wonder Magician is for when I would have the Halka Fibrax out on the field, and then I would summon this card out to destroy the Artifact Scythe that I had on the field to activate and summon it onto the field, restricting my opponent's extra deck summons. And for the Xyz monsters, I run 1 Time Star Magician and the 1 Zeus for when I use Time Star Magician, then attack with it, and then overlay with it into Zeus during the following turn to at least have the 2 materials. It's not a play I like to use as often because I would lose my own scales, but I needed to do it if my opponent was either going to wipe my board to begin with and just have a better card on the field for protection. And that is it for the extra deck. As for some of the go-to plays, like I said, Tuning Magician definitely does help with a good majority of it. So as long as you have even that 1 normal summon on the field, you can then go for the special summon of Tuning Magician if both of your scales are set up as well, which you can easily do by completing the scales with cards like Pendulum Call and then giving you your 2 scales needed on the field. My favorite ones are still the Oath Dragon and the Double Iris. You then normal summon out your Harmonizing and then special summon the Tuning Magician. You'll take the burn damage and give your opponent the life points. Go into your Beyond the Pendulum, gain the additional search with this card. The Tuning Magician will also be banished, so remember that. And with it, you can then have the play to add to your hand another of the Harmonizing Magician. With this play, you then have your search ready for there. Don't forget, you can't summon the Harmonizing if you use it in the extra deck, because it cannot be special summoned, and your Pendulum scales are also negated when you summon out your Beyond the Pendulum. So if you didn't want to go for that play, you always have the Halka Fibrax play to go into as well before that, but still having the one search means you can go for the Pendulum summon of this card and any other additional card you may have had in your hand to begin with, along with the potential that your normal summon could be something better for the search, like Skullcrab Joker, and not the Harmonizing Magician that I showed. This is just a worse scenario play, because once it's locked into your extra deck, you can't summon it out. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like I said, I had a good time running this deck. I always like when I can use something that's mostly utilized with the new support from the booster pack at Sneak Preview, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.